up, everyone? Welcome to The Rebel and the Rogue,
a Star Wars podcast.
I am your host, Bevan.
I am your co-host, Jason Tobias.
The first C-3PO I've met.
You never know what droid you're going to come across.
From the Star Wars Resistance show.
One audition, got the producers, and I get the call from Lucasfilm.
Blix, the main baddie, and droids.
Like Last Jedi bad,
May the Force be with you.
Back before home video, the 430 Movies famous theme weeks gave us a chance to see classic movies and new favorites. That spirit lives again. Join us now for the 430 Movie.
Hey, and welcome to WonderCon at home. I guess you're at home, but we're in Anaheim. Just look at Steve. We've been having a great time here at Comic-Con. We're wondering where you are. And anybody get anything good at the dealer's room? Probably not. No. Okay. Well, I want to introduce you to this great panel. Obviously, I am not Chris Parnell. Sadly, the much smarter, charming, and talented Chris Parnell could not be here. So I'm stepping in to moderate. I'm Mark Altman. I'm showrunner of CW's Pandora, now streaming commercial-free on Amazon. And I will be leading today's discussion, which is brought to you by the 430 Movie Podcast and Electric Now, the free streaming video app you can download from your favorite app store, and includes the hit video podcast, The 430 Movie, and Glorious Treksperts and Best Movies Never Made, as well as hundreds of hours of entertainment. Wow. First plug, 30 seconds, already a plug. That's awesome. So anyway, I'm really excited because we have a combination of veterans of this panel, and we have some newcomers, which is going to be a good mix because you won't hear the same answers you hear every year. No, it's going to be really exciting. I'm so glad because it's kind of like the next generation. We're kind of like refreshing it. And like if I end up like dying in the next couple of years, at least I know the panel will be in a good hands. So it's a good thing. And I know
you went dark right away.
It's a dark time. It's a very dark time. So I want to introduce you. And first I have to say, two of our regular panelists who won't be joining us for the best of all possible reasons, the wonderful and talented and fantastic Sarah Watson is scrambling to finish her pilot right now. She just shot a pilot. Had we introduced it, she would have gotten a standing ovation, even over virtual, because she is making a pilot for Warner Brothers about the kids recreating Goonies for a fan film. And we're all so excited for her. We can't wait to see it. Richard Donner and Steven Spielberg are executive producers, so we're thrilled for Sarah. And that is a good excuse not to be on this panel today. But she promises to be back for San Diego. And speaking of people who are playing hooky from this panel, Ryan Condell, who is working on this tiny little public access show. It's called House of Dragons for HBO. It's the follow-up to Game of Thrones. So he's in the UK on a completely different time schedule and getting ready to start shooting the series. So he couldn't join us. He also promises to be with us in San Diego. And I will hold that against him when HBO publicity tells him, no, you can't do that panel. You can only do stuff promoting Game of Thrones. But we're going to get him back. And he would love to be back. So anyway, I want to introduce you to our panel today. We have such great and talented people from across all kinds of genres and all kinds of writing. First, an old friend of mine, a super talented showrunner. She has contributed to a wide variety of television dramas, including Farscape, Grey's Anatomy, Ugly Betty, Castle, The Vampire Diaries, Haven, The Flash, and Titans. She is a Writers Guild of America Award winner and received 2 nominations. And just there's Emmys galore. She was showrunner on Haven for 4 seasons. And she was the executive producer and showrunner of the CW's The Flash, co-executive producer on season 1 of Titans for DC Universe, and is currently executive producer and showrunner of the Amazon series The Summer I Turned Pretty, the story of Ashley Miller's life. And that is, of course, Gabrielle Stanton. Welcome, Gab.
Hello. I feel very important now.
Well, you should. That was a good bio. Very impressive. Very impressive. So, and speaking of Ashley, this is the summer he turned pretty. And we are so excited because he's been talking about this mysterious show of his that he's been working on for Netflix for quite a while. Just recently, it had its premiere. It's a huge hit. People love it. And of course, I'm talking about DOTA, Dragon's Fire.
Dragon's Blood, but that's okay, Mark. It's Pete. You know what? It's animated by Pete Potwhistle.
That's what you get for not sending your bio to me before the panel. and look, you already got a spinoff.
I know, right? That's the best part.
Anyway, DOTA, Dragon's Blood is a huge success for Netflix. We're thrilled to have Ashley. Ashley has written for such shows as Fringe, Black Sails, Terminator, The Sarah Connor Chronicles. He's also written the feature films Thor, X-Men First Class. And along with Stephen Melching, he recently launched the new animation podcast, Cartoon Barroom. So welcome, Ashley.
Thank you for having me.
You should think about changing the name of your show.
Oh my God, we've changed it twice.
Okay.
It's a title so nice, we've changed it twice.
Making his return engagement to the panel. You've seen him at San Diego. He's back. It's VJ Boyd. He has written for Justified and SWAT and was the co-creator of Lincoln Rhyme, Hunt for the Bone Collector. Welcome back to the panel, VJ.
Thank you very much, Mark.
I even managed to get your shows correct.
Lincoln Rhyme, Hunt for the Dragon's Blood, yes.
I'm telling you, Parnell is sitting at home just shaking his head going, oh, I should have moderated. Why did I not moderate this?
I'm not going to watch this now.
Maybe. Also joining us, another regular of the panel. We're thrilled to have him back. He's an Emmy and WGA award-nominated writer-producer on more than 40 animated shows, including X-Men, the animated series, Batman, The Brave and the Bold, Star Wars Rebels, The Pete Potwhistle Hour, Carmen Sandiego, and the upcoming DOTA, Dragon's Blood, which premiered recently on Netflix. Stephen Melching.
Hi there. How you doing?
We're good, Steve. How's things in Anaheim?
It's a hot day today. It's gorgeous. As you can see, there's lots of blue skies and golden sunshine down here in Anaheim.
Wow.
To quote David Lynch.
Sounds exciting. Okay, he's a co-executive producer and writer for television, features, video, mobile games, and comic books. He is best known for his TV work on Sci-Fi Channel's Warehouse 13, CW's Beauty and the Beast, The Flash, MTV's Scream Season 3, CW's Arrow, and most recently, CW's Legacy. Welcome back, Deric Hughes.
Sorry, correction. It's Legacies, Dragon's Ass. That's the name of the show. So.
We're not going to let this go, are we?
No.
God.
You met us.
Oh, man. I can't believe it. And plus, the Comic-Con did say to not use profanity as kids may be watching. So I'm gonna let it go and I'm gonna move on. Move on.
The body part that a dragon has. It's fun.
Exactly.
Right. Actually, it's a cloaca. And Dragon's Cloaca was one of the rejected titles. Honestly, people thought I'd take it the wrong way.
I hate moderating these panels. Okay, she's a writer who shows for such shows as Millennium, Haunted, Freakish, Swamp Thing. I see you didn't mention Scream. And most recently, Motherland. Catherine K Reindell. Welcome, Kay. Good to see you. One of the original 5. So it's great to have you back. Now I'm going to get to the next generation. I'm so excited. We have some great people joining the panel. And isn't that what being a writer is about paying it forward? So it's so nice that we have some new people who can, this next panel, I can tell you, he years ago, he was my intern, assistant, really PA on one of my features, and he is having tremendous success right now. He is not only got his start on the popular web series Honest Trailers, he moved into TV work as a writer and story editor on several different comedy series for Disney Channel. After developing a pilot with Disney, he went to executive produce and showrun the animated series Skylanders for Netflix, based on the Activision Blizzard property. But he is currently a writer and producer on one of my favorite shows. And that's not hyperbole. That's me saying it really is one of my favorite shows. It's one of the reasons he got on the panel, because I want to hear stories about the show that I love so much. HBO Max's The Flight Attendant. Welcome, Ian Weinreich. Weinreich.
Hi, Mark.
Hey, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
It's been a long time.
17 years, maybe 16.
Oh
15?
my God, you're aging both of us.
I know.
I just got to say, Ian was an amazing PA, but you're an even better writer. So
it's close, but I think it's like I never know.
Which one had more benefits?
It's a good question.
To say what is more satisfying. Okay. Speaking of super talented people who've never been on our panel, now this is another one of our hyphenates. We have a couple of hyphenates this time, which is going to be really interesting. And we have two with the same hyphen. So we'll see who's it going to be. He's an actor, he's a writer, he's an artist, he's a filmmaker. He made the Tracking Board's Young and Hungry list of the top 100 writers on The Verge. As a writer, he is producer on Amazon Prime series The Boys and wrote on NBC's Timeless. There's still a plane going around the convention center saying renew Timeless. He recently adapted for the autobiography Running for My Life by former NFL running back Warwick Dunn for anonymous content. And he will also adapt the book Asada, an autobiography by the fugitive Black Panther Asada Shakur for Freedom Road Pictures. He's a writer's fellow at HBO. See, this is what happens when you send the bio. You get all the good stuff. Writer's fellow at HBO, a screenwriting fellow at Film Independent. And as a filmmaker, he is currently developing his short film Fractal, collaborating with the Jim Henson Creature Shop, ILM, and executive producer Eric Kripke. He is Anslem Richardson. We know him as Slim. Of course, we worked together on Agent X. And he is probably the greatest artist we've ever had in a writer's room. He would always make little drawings of what was going on in the writer's room. It was great. And I hopefully maybe you have
people
some
sleeping, people snacking. Is that what was going on?
Yeah. Trader Joe's. It was all pictures of Trader Joe's. Welcome, Slim. How are you?
I'm good, guys. Actually, I have to admit, I've never been to WonderCon, so this is.
And you still haven't.
Yes.
I know, and it's funny because we used to talk in the writers' room about the show about Agent X, and by second season, third season, we'll be going to Comic-Con. It's going to be great. They're going to love us there, and of course, we got canceled after New York Comic-Con. So, anyway.
By the way, Slim, I have heard that you have the best board handwriting anyone's ever seen.
Don't let that go around.
I have heard this from.
Don't let that go around.
It's like, I don't want to write on the board anymore.
Even when he's a showrunner, he'll still be writing on the board because someone will be like, "We heard you had the best handwriting."
How is this happening?
It's in my contract that only Slim writes on the board. That's it. I'm sorry.
And he or she who controls the board controls the room.
Dude,
tell us why you don't want that. Tell us why you don't want that getting out. Tell us why being known for having great handwriting and being great on the board is something you never want people to know.
Because you never get to sit down and you are the room secretary.
For the rest of your career.
I also have pretty good handwriting, and it is exhausting standing in front of that goddamn board for hours and trying to keep track of everything and get everything on that board and get it in the right order that makes sense to people and everything. Oh my God.
And then when something changes, just like one thing changes, and you're just like, oh my God.
I got one more introduction before we start. Another parenthetical. She was raised to be a doctor, but born to be an artist. Wow, I can't do this. I need Don LaFontaine to read your bio. I can't do this. A genuine MIT graduate, she gave up problem sets and thermodynamics to become a writer, actor, and producer. Her parents are still scratching their heads. See, I didn't go for the joke. I wasn't ready for it. She is a graduate of the CBS Writers Mentoring Program and was named a WGA Writer Access Project honoree. She was a staff writer on SEAL Team on CBS and is currently a story editor on Macgyver on CBS. Teresa's superpowers include power napping, parallel parking, and spending too much money at farmers markets. Ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, it's Teresa Huang. Welcome. Newcomer.
Yes.
Thanks for having me. You're welcome. And of course, I'm Mark A. Altman, writer producer for shows as Castle, Agent X, Librarians, and Necessary Roughness, and the showrunner of CW sci-fi series Pandora, currently streaming on Amazon Prime, and the author of some many wonderful books like The 50-Year Mission and Oral History of Star Trek. My new book about Star Wars will be out this July with Ed Gross. Okay. So
those
guys,
books came from the ether. They came from the void.
It does look like that. Because I didn't know Mark was in front of a background until just now.
You know what the weird part is? He's not in front of a background.
How did he do that?
He reached into another dimension and brought his books out.
Let me tell you. I will tell you the story to amuse your cat. So here's the thing. I'm up in my office, which basically has a Peloton and a big window behind me. And it's pretty messy. And I realized, I hate that as the background. So I said, what if I take a background of another part of my house, which isn't near the internet router, that looks better, and use that as my background? So I literally took a picture from downstairs, and I'm using that to fake my office upstairs, and it's working out great.
That's brilliant.
Anyway, there you go.
That's great producing, dude. That's awesome.
Thank you. I try. So, I want to ask you all, particularly some of our veterans on the panel, people on these kind of panels, they always talk about, how'd you break in? And I always think that's a kind of ridiculous question, because everyone who's broken in has their own unique story, which isn't particularly useful in terms of, people aren't going to be able to break in the way, Ashley did or Kay did. There's not one story. There's not like a lesson that, this is how you break in. But what I'd like you to talk about is, once you did break in, how did you engineer that next step? How did you go from being staff writer, maybe to eventually a co-exec or a showrunner, or sell that first pilot? Because people don't realize, they think once they've broken in, they've made it, right? But that's not true. So tell me about, once you're in the game, how do you go from being the guy writing on the board to the guy running the show? And I'm going to start with VJ. VJ, do you have an answer for that?
In my case, I was very fortunate that the show I was on, which was Justified, kept coming back. And that's extremely helpful when you can get that first job and the show keeps coming back, and you can kind of rise in the ranks on that show. Because Mark's very correct that I know a lot of people who got that staff writing job, and then the show got canceled, and then they went a year, 2 years, maybe longer before they had to break in again. But I would also say that sometimes the show comes back and they don't bring you back. In my case, I was also fortunate that they kept bringing me back. And I think that the second season I was there, because I was a 2-season staff writer, that's a whole other conversation that a lot of people have to go through that as well. And I think that I really had to prove myself that second staff writer season, because I think, so to give a quick bit of advice so we can go around and everyone else can give advice also, it was that my first staff writer season, I treated it more like one would treat a job, where you are starting this job where I'm going to learn, and I'm going to let everybody else speak first, which is what they tell you to do, and I'm going to try and have pitches prepared and stuff. But unfortunately, that was not impressive on the show that I was in. That was not what they wanted. That was what some of the producers above me told me I should do. But the boss, the guy who's going to decide whether I come back, that's not what he wanted, right? So the next season, when they brought me back, I was aware, okay, no matter what certain people above me want, they want me to be quiet, I need to talk, because that's what the guy who controls my employment situation wants. So I just had to learn that, okay, who's in control of my fate here? That's who I need to please, who's the showrunner. I'm going to do what the showrunner wants, and I'm just going to have to live with this guy over here glancing at me because he doesn't think staff writers should talk, right? So that would be my piece of advice.
What was it like for you, Gab? I mean, you started off, you were staff writer, a VIP, if I remember.
VIP, yeah.
And you had been freelancing for a while, and then I know, your first chance to showrun was on Moonlight, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Moonlight was number one. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I listen to these panels. I watch these panels, and so tell us about kind of moving up and how you do that, and also maybe what are the things that work, and then sometimes what can be scary about that process.
Well, it's interesting because Vijay touched on it a little bit. Back when I was kind of starting out, it was really kind of like the Army. Like every year you got a promotion to the next level, from staff writer to story editor, executive story editor, and it pretty much went along. Unlike VJ, like I was on a show, I was on VIP, but only on for 1 year, because I then took another job on Earth Final Conflict, which then got canceled. And then I took a job on Farscape, which was only for a year because it was in Australia. So like I was again trying to go out every single time and start kind of all over again. The slight advantage I feel like I may have had over people now is there really wasn't a question whether when I got that next show, that I was going to get that position bump. Like people were not as inclined to say, oh, well, you were story editor last time, you have to be story editor this time. It was just kind of a little more of a given. So in that way, I think it's much harder now. I know people who have been staff writers like 3 times on 2 or 3 different shows. And it's really hard to kind of break up through the level. I think the trickiest thing to navigate is that mid-level. You can break in and you can get that like story editor job. You can make it up to like executive story editor. But nowadays, in particular, like so many of these rooms for these streaming shows and these short order shows, they basically just want, the staff writer who's not getting paid basically any money, and then the co-EPs and up. So I think what's really hard and what you need, like Vijay was saying, is to get yourself on a show that keeps coming back and you keep coming back so that you can kind of fight through that middle ground. I mean, the hardest person to try to convince anyone to staff would be like a co-producer or like a producer, because they're sometimes super experienced, but they just don't have that upper level that makes the studio comfortable. And yet they're far more expensive than like a really lower level person. So I have no advice because who knows what show you get on if it's going to get picked up. I was on shows for 1 year that I thought I was going to like retire on. And then I was on shows that I was like, well, this isn't going to make it 6 episodes and it's still running. So it's hard to say. But that right now, I think, is something that people starting out have to navigate that I feel like wasn't as common back when I started out.
Hey, how did you make the jump from being a writer who was moving up the ladder to show running your own shows? What was...
I am something of a cautionary tale because I was stuck at producer level for 10 years. 10 years stuck at producer level. So the only show that my writing partner and I were on that went longer than a year was our first show, Millennium. We were on that for 2 years. And every year since then, and that was when a lot of you were in high school, every year since then, we have had to start over every year. So I think, the thing that's great about these panels is also the thing that is not helpful a lot of times about these panels, because you see people who are very successful and who, now obviously I'm not saying if you're on a show that runs for 10 years, you're not talented, you're crazy talented to be on a show that runs for 10 years, but you don't have to think so much about moving up the ladder. It's a lot harder when you're basically just freelancing the entire time. So I think it was hard then. It's even harder now. Like Gab was talking about the short order shows. There are cable networks that have designated their seasons as season 1A and 1B so that they don't have to promote writers. So it's a real problem. And honestly, the best advice that I could give somebody is make sure your agent is a killer and make sure they move you up that ladder as quickly as they possibly can. Do not take, I'll be, now they have this whole new thing that's like a junior or senior staff writer. That's insanity. Staff writer should not be a 3-year process.
But they really have senior staff writers?
Senior staff, yes. I have heard that this is a new thing that they're coming up with so that they don't.
It's like on Disney shows, right? I think
that's where I've talked to some people who've been stuck there, and it's a real problem. And the best thing you can do is just try to blow through those levels as quickly as possible. And if your agent, like we had a not great agent clearly for a while, if your agent is not on board with that, you have to get a better agent. As soon as we got a better agent, that agent immediately turned around and moved us. We got moved up, and we still were not on shows that came back. But she got us those promotions so that we were able to, in 2 years, get to co-EP from 10 years at producer.
That title bump is so important. And I know we were in a show where there's some major problems, and we were being asked, my writing partner and I, to sort of do, I wouldn't say help save the show, but get things back on the tracks and, rewriting a lot of stuff and fixing a lot of things on sets and basically doing a lot above our title. And, so our one thing was we didn't want more money. We didn't want anything. All we wanted was the title bump. That, and it was such a good decision on our part, because I think what's happening a lot of times, even for people who are selling pilots, they're not even getting EP. They're getting like co-EP potentially when we
worked on a show where it was created by 2 guys. One of them got an EP credit. The other one got a supervising producer credit.
Whoa.
I know.
Yeah,
What
that's crazy.
even that? Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. Well, I want to ask for two of our parentheticals who are actors in Teresa and Slim's case, why the drive to writing, and how do you feel that your career as an actor benefited your writing careers? So start with Teresa.
I mean, I suppose there's the obvious things like understanding character, understanding how an actor breaks down a scene really helps me and, know the elements I need to put into a scene. Very on a practical level, I know the actor's brain. So when we're in the room talking about a scene, I'll be the first to point out, like, this actor has no lines. Like, this actor is in the scene, they only said one thing. Like, let's look at that, because they're going to read the script and be like, why am I here if I'm only saying one thing? And just understanding when I'm talking to directors during prep about how to approach the actor. That's one thing I'm always gauging, early on in the prep process, is how comfortable is this director with the actors? And when I'm telling them about the actors on the show and how to approach them, I can do it in a way that gives them the tools to speak to that actor to get the performance they need, because I know how actors are sensitive people. That's why we approach that, why we love that art. And it's like, you really have to approach them in a, with a little bit of delicacy to make sure that they don't get shut down and don't, throw away your lines and not give you the performance that the story needs to hold it together.
What about you, Slim?
Yo, give me that question one more time, yo.
Just how do you feel that your career as an actor prepared you for your writing career, and how does it benefit you, and maybe how is it at all a liability for you?
No, it's not a liability until, you're in the writer's room, and all the other writers looking at you like, you're the mole. You're one of them. But for me, I only got into writing because I just wasn't going out for the roles that I was interested in. The really cool, three-dimensional, stuff that inspired me as an actor coming up. And Teresa's right. It's this great thing of knowing what actors want and are looking for, and knowing, where they were either a few episodes ago, an episode ago, or a season ago, or whatever, and where that character arc can either naturally take them or send them into a place that's surprising for that actor to kind of like bite into. And treating every episode, at least, either the script that you're working on or when you're helping the other writers, how to make sure that every actor and every character is serviced. So there's nobody just sort of just like hanging out, you know what I mean? And waiting for, the 1 and 2 to just go through their scene. Just like life, everybody's doing something, everybody's active. And that's the really cool thing. And then when you're on set, it just becomes natural. I just love being on set, you know what I mean? In front of, behind the camera, and that whole process, and helping the directors out when, they're more interested in a shot or, how it looks. And it's like, you got to get into the emotion. We have to get into like the motivation. We got to, really mine that and come up with something rich.
Deric, I want to ask you. Go ahead, Teresa.
I'll add again. Add on to that. This is not to say that writers don't have these skills too. Like writers, that's what we all do on our shows, is try to get in the mind of our actors and figure out how to get the performance we want out of them. But I think I've found it helps, the staff I'm on right now, when they're like, why did this actor have this reaction to the, I talked to this actor and they had this reaction, and I can kind of, well, it's probably because of this. And I've been there, when you look at the script and you're just looking at your stuff and you're like, what does this mean? Am I getting written off? It's like, no, it's fine.
Deric, I want to ask you, because you've very successfully gone from show to show since breaking in. You've worked consistently. How does one become indispensable in the room? How does one become that kind of person that showrunners know they can lean on, and they work consistently and are able to make that jump from show? Because people also don't realize showrunners talk, we all talk and often are giving references. And if someone is not good or someone is difficult, people eventually are going to hear about it. And the people you like working about tend to work consistently because they have advocates in their corner. And obviously, Deric, you're somebody like that who is consistently working. So what is that experience like for you? What do you feel you and your writing partner bring to a room, and how would you recommend that people consistently bring that in their own careers?
To paraphrase, one of my favorite shows, don't fork up. It's like that's first and foremost. I mean, I think that's the thing. You want to show that you're indispensable, that you contribute, that you're a team player. You're not necessarily a contrarian. If you are a contrarian, you're a contrarian with ideas that is willing to push back, but know when to push back and when not to push back, especially when you're first starting out. It's really great to have a good support system in place, meaning a good showrunner that actually supports and believes in writers and will help the writers. If not, then you have to pivot to who else could be your allies on the show. Early on in our career, my writing partner and I, Ben Rabb, we would talk to ourselves and say, like, well, we got to be like Switzerland. You can't take sides, especially when it becomes very sort of political in a room where there's also these factions. And it's starts to turn into Hunger Games, where you're like in District 13 and District 9 is messing up, and you're like, do we go join with District 8? It's like, no, we gotta, you have to remain sort of neutral if you can. Again, it's like, because the last thing you want to do is ever paint a target on your back in the worst way imaginable, meaning that someone feels that you are not any of those things, and that can affect your next job. Because like you said, showrunners talk, and it's very easy for a showrunner to pick up a phone and call the other showrunner, say, hey, you work with this person, how did it go? And if all they remember is that you being troublesome, a headache, nightmare, whatever, that will come out in mostly a diplomatic way. Sometimes they may look, let's cone of silence here, but they were a total disaster. Don't ever hire them. Don't even let them near your children. It's like, just, keep them away as much as possible. So I think those are things. And then at the end of the day, the other thing is you got to be a good writer. I mean, let's not forget that you are hired as a writer, as a person that has good ideas, and you got to be good on the page. I mean, there's absolutely a learning curve when you're first starting out, because you're trying to capture the voice of that show, and the showrunner again will help you, and the writers that actually have been in your position will be there to help you out. But you still got to be able to not just impress the showrunner, you got to impress all the executives that are going to be reading your stuff, and that will ensure that it won't guarantee that you'll get a next job, but it increases your chances. And I think that is the thing. You just got to keep those things in mind starting out, because you're going to make mistakes. You're going to be stumbling over yourself. You're going to, as Vijay was saying, the idea that some people expect a staff writer to be quiet, not say anything. My showrunner was like, I didn't hire you to be quiet and be a bump on the log. I came with ideas, and he really set the tone. Jack Kenny on Warehouse 13, the very first day, says, if you don't have an idea, I will go out in the lobby and talk to the security guard and get an idea from somebody. It's like, I didn't hire everybody to be mute. So, it's like you want, but you also have to understand it's like a little game of double dutch, like the timing of it, like when you can throw out your ideas. And then if it gets shot down, don't be that person that's going to be like trying to fight that idea all day long. That's the other thing. So, and I'm sure that everybody else can contribute in the same, here in this group can say, have the same sorts of experiences and observations. And that's why they are where they are right now. It's because of these things.
I want to ask, Steve, you've had such a successful career in animation, working on some of the most important and enduring animated shows like Star Wars: The Clone Wars and Rebels, and now on DOTA for Netflix, which is such a huge success. You bring this incredible amount of experience. Ashley, conversely, comes from the live action world. This was your first brush with animation. Can you tell us both what how would you compare and contrast working in animation versus live action, or is there not a dramatic difference? And what were the biggest surprises to you, Ashley? And Steve, this was for you, I guess, your first quote unquote adult animated series. Not that the Clone Wars and Rebels and obviously Rusty and Big Guy and all these shows and X-Men weren't adult shows, but this is a more in terms of the audience that it's targeting, and in terms of what you can do with restrictions, it's a different kind of show for you. So can you guys sort of speak to that a little bit?
Want to go? Start?
Well, you're the boss, so you go first, boss. I guess, right?
All right, fine. Fine then. Maybe I will. You can't make me.
Of course, you didn't send your bio, so maybe I should let Steve go first, since he follows instructions.
I'm terrible at that's why they put me in charge. I'm terrible at following instructions. I just give them. So here's what I can tell you the difference between writing for animation and writing for live action. Imagine that you're writing a 1 hour that has the budget of one of Jim Cameron's Avatar films. Only now you cut out half of the scenes, which means you get rid of the C stories and all the bullshit that you hate and everybody finds boring anyway. And then you're kind of left with something that for anybody else would seem totally unproducible, and you hand it off to people who are thousands of miles away. And you figure out a communication process with them. It was a big shift. Even like from the difference between, I mean, there's almost no comparison, the difference between features and writing for television animation or writing for live action television and writing for animation television, just in terms of the things I had to know and understand. And when I started, I did not understand them at all. So I made the best showrunning decision of my career, which was I decided to hire somebody who knew what he was talking about, which was Steve, to see me through the process. Because look, man, I did the WGA showrunner training program, and there's a lot of stuff I know about, producing and all of that. I mean, on this show, I was my own freaking line producer until last July, okay? Sending myself strongly worded emails about budget and schedule. I set up some really ugly meetings with me. It wasn't pretty. But there were things I had to understand about pipeline, about how things worked. And I had to get smart on those things. And until I was smart, I needed to be surrounded by people who were already smart. And Steve was definitely one of them. And it was a process. It's, for every 30-page teleplay, we did a 10-page outline just so that we could communicate with the animators what was coming. We did, another 5 or 6 pages just of, things that are like, here are comps for props, for everything for prep was like another 6 pages of writing. And then we would go through and do 10 pages that were basically breakdowns of every scene, like saying point of view character, what's the tone, like what's the most important moments, what do we not want to see if there's something specific that we're trying to avoid. So we're generating all of this material just to send to support the production of this 30-page script. The other thing that was really different and is just astonished me is we are writing all the way up until the moment that we're done with post. We are essentially rewriting and reshooting, in fact, until we're done with post. I can get episodes in that are fully animated and then say, golly, it's kind of beyond ADR because it's let's send it back, let's do a retake, like let's get a completely different shot. Like in live action, if you don't have the shot, man, sorry, sets are struck. The actors are gone and they hate you now. It's just, you're not getting it. But in animation, you can, but it takes a long time. 8 episodes of live action television takes what, guys? Like, if the gods are smiling on you and like you have no time, you can do that in, several months. 8 episodes, a year, exactly. 8 episodes of animation. I've been working on it for 2.5 years. And it's just come out. So it's like making a feature. It's pretty different. It's pretty crazy.
And don't worry, we're going to come to you after Steve speaks about making the transition from animation to live action. I want to hear about that as well, because you've had a lot of success in animation and now are doing live action. But Steve, tell us about navigating those wars and the challenges, obviously, and then sort of being that number two to Ashley, who came in not knowing what he didn't know, but had the benefit of you who knew quite a bit about this world of animation.
Gosh, well, as you said, a lot of the shows I've worked on, I would say are sort of all audience shows. We never try to write down to kids. There are just certain content restrictions that we have based on where a show is going to air. But we always try to write the shows to be smart and to write good characters and be true to whatever the show is. What was great about DOTA was a lot of those content restrictions were gone. For the first time I could write, 4-letter words in my scripts, and we ended up cutting out a lot of them because we just didn't need them. But it was really fun to be able to do that for a change. And we had sex scenes and crazy violence sometimes that we couldn't get away with on a regular animated show. But in the context of this show was totally appropriate. It was what the show needed. So that was kind of liberating in a way to not have to have some of those filters in place. But other than that, it was, I had a really great experience working with Ashley on this show. He's an incredibly smart and talented storyteller. And I learned some new tricks for sure working on that show. And I'm really proud of what we did. And to kind of add on to what Deric was saying earlier about sustaining a career, I think it's really about, trying to be that number two or that person in the room or on the production that is supportive, that is always has ideas, always has a positive problem solving attitude, and is someone who's going to deliver professional quality work on time so that you're never the cause of a problem. You're a solution. So you become someone that people want to work with and that will tell their friends, hey, you really should hire this guy or this person. They're really great in the room. They're really talented. They've never been late, never missed a deadline. And that was how I sustained my career for my first 10 years. I didn't even have an agent for the first 10 years of my career for animation. It was all strictly word of mouth.
Well, Ian, you've gone from animation to live action. It's going to take us to the next part of this panel, which is also how the business has changed so dramatically, because, of course, you're doing an original show for a streaming platform, and that's such a big part of the world that we live in now. If you went back and looked at all these panels over the years that we've done, most of the advice you would throw out the window, because we were talking about a network television environment that has so dramatically been, in upheaval in the last year or two, and we talk about how hard it is. I think the only person who is working on 24 episode seasons in this panel is probably Teresa and Deric. Everybody else is doing 8 to 10 episode orders, and that's kind of the norm. So tell us a little bit about as making that jump from what you were doing and to the world of HBO Max and the Flight Attendant.
Well, I had kind of a similar situation where I was sort of thrown into animation for the first time and really kind of had to learn as I go and didn't understand anything about like what a pipeline was. And it was just me and one other person doing 13 episodes. But luckily, it was the show's third season that we took over. So there was already a great team in place that sort of guided us through that. And, learning how to write for animation, because it was a thing where you don't have limits, yet you still have only certain sets we could use that were already built from the previous 3 seasons, and only certain props we could use. You could only rebuild 5 new props, but it would be, you can take old props and change the color so that they look new. And just figuring out how to manage with what you have to work with was a big change of pace. And also learning how to do your workday when your animators are in France and have a very different work day than people in the US do. And that was also a huge learning curve. But what's interesting was that I came from the live action I was coming from at Disney Channel, even though it's kids TV, we were doing 25 to 30 episodes a season. And so I still did have that part of like what felt like a normal network schedule. But I think so often, people like to put you in boxes. And I was really in this kids' TV box for a while. And so I really had to have a plan with my reps about how to get out of that and how to eventually get to HBO Max. So I have the benefit, I think, of having both a network schedule background, but also this really fast-paced animation background, so that dealing with, an 8-episode streaming schedule was actually a relatively easy transition for me. And one that, it just took a long time for me to get to out of the Disney world.
Yeah. Ian talked about something which I think is something we've all faced, which is, being pigeonholed. I mean, Gab, for a long time, you were working on a lot of sci-fi shows, and there's that danger. I mean, you were fortunate to break out of it, but for a long time where your agents and certainly people are going to hire you only say, oh, she's that sci-fi girl. And then all of a sudden you get Grey's Anatomy and Ugly Betty and, it's all forgotten.
Exactly. No one remembered. Well, it was funny because I had no intention of breaking out. I wanted to be the sci-fi girl, but my reps were like, "Okay, you're going to get pigeonholed. You'll only ever work in sci-fi." And I'm like, "Okay." And they're, and they were like, "Well, sci-fi won't be as popular forever." I'm like, "No, it will." But yeah. So I ended up, being fortunate enough to be able to break out. And I always think it's kind of ridiculous for people. I'm sure Ian would feel the same way. It's like you do one script, sure, maybe it's like a kid in it, or maybe it takes place here, or maybe it takes place on Mars, but it's still, the characters are the same. The writing is the same. If you take one of the first pilots, non-sci-fi pilots I wrote, was basically kind of like a northern exposure in the outback of Australia type thing. And I gave it to people and they were like, "Oh, I didn't realize you wrote stuff other than sci-fi." And I was like, dude, this is the outback of Australia. If it could be Mars, it would be the same exact script, So I think some of that is changing a lot now, which I'm kind of grateful for. I mean, I think, people are dipping into sci-fi and then coming back out so that it's much easier. You don't feel, as much like you're going to get completely pigeonholed. But yeah, no, I actually ended up on a completely non-sci-fi show yet again. So, but I keep trying to put a robot in it. So we'll see what happens.
But also, I think there's 500 shows. I mean, there's just so much stuff where, early in our careers, there definitely was the fear of being pigeonholed in something was very, it was real kind of way of like, oh, you're just going to be writing the sci-fi shows because and then there's like, oh, well, I'm going to be writing on the Sci-Fi Channel for the rest of my life. Great. And it's just, but now there's there's people that jump from, half hours to hours to, sci-fi to drama. I mean, right now, we're working on a Western, and then our next thing that we'll be working on is called Dragon's Elbow. And it's going to be a real fun show. So it's, it's just two different things there.
Now, isn't it, isn't it true that, because of the 600 shows, and I don't know what the latest is, I'll have to ask John Landgraf, but it's a great opportunity for people with a lot of experience because they're desperate for people who have experience. But at the same time, there's a great opportunity for people who are breaking in, especially if you're a playwright or you have a podcast. Those it seems to be the 3 Ps, and I can't think of the third one, but maybe you can. But the 2 Ps are playwrights and podcasts and poets. Yes, that's right. Thank you, Amanda Gorman. So that's true. Playwrights, podcasters, and poets are and that's a great way to break in because there are great opportunities at the beginning of your career right now, and then there's great opportunities for people who have enough experience. Because there's just so many shows and they need experienced showrunners, and Carlton Hughes can't run them all. Mm-hmm. So that's a big opportunity. So let's talk about real quickly how the business changed, and then I do want to talk about how COVID has changed the business. And people may say, "Oh God, why are you bringing up COVID? We're at home. We're hopefully this is going to end soon." But COVID
we're in Dragon Con. Look at Steve. I mean, it's like
you're at Dragon Con. Okay. We're at WonderCon. I don't know about you. So, but obviously it has such a huge impact on all of us, and some may be here for the duration, even once we're all inoculated and once the pandemic becomes less severe and goes away. I mean, virtual rooms. Unfortunately, it does seem like there is a lot going on now where studios and networks are greenlighting shows, getting all the scripts written, and then handing it over to director and sending the showrunners home, which is disempowering writers who have always been the number one creative influence. And, it's like people at networks are going, hey, we finally can get rid of those pesky writers, so there's some good trends that are happening, but also some worrisome trends, which I'm sure the WGA is going to be looking at as well. Can you guys speak to sort of the big changes in the industry and maybe also how the pandemic has impacted what you do?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Okay. So the big change is obviously network TV is not the behemoth that it used to be, which when that first started to change over, when we first started to get streaming shows and cable, and we stopped having to, when we would pitch, they would always say, what's the engine? What happens every week? And then there was a sort of glorious period of time when they didn't ask that question. And I think that sort of a problem is that the pendulum has swung too far that way. And I'm at the point where I want an episode of television that has a beginning, middle, and an end. And I think that when you talk about, a season of television now being a 10-hour movie, which I do not like that description, because I think a TV show should be a TV show and a movie should be a movie. I really want that. I want that back. I want that sense of I am sitting down to watch an hour of television. And actually, since Ian is on The Flight Attendant, I freaking love that show. And that's one of the reasons that I love it, is that it feels like a television show. Like I know that I'm watching a television show, and it's so fantastic and it's so watchable. I'm excited about shows like that, where we are starting to kind of get back to the idea of television. I think it also helps when you're writing a spec, because it's so hard to know what pilot to write anymore, because you have your reps are telling you they're hearing one thing, but you, the writer, have to write something that you are passionate about that is going to represent who you are. So I think it's very tricky. I'm hoping that the pendulum can kind of swing back to the middle a little bit, because I like what network has to offer and I like what streaming has to offer. And I feel like the world is big enough that we should have all of those things as options.
Well, we've shown a lot of love for A Flight Attendant, so I think it's only appropriate that we say to Slim, The Boys is freaking awesome too. It's there's so many. There's such a plethora of great shows on. We really are in a renaissance, and thank God, because the movie theaters have been closed for a year. So thank God for television. Anybody else want to weigh in? I mean, Deric, how do you feel? Particularly somewhere like the CW now, where something like Stargirl was commissioned for DC Universe, and then it becomes an HBO Max show, and then it shows up on the CW and does extremely well for them. The whole ecosystem is changing so quickly.
It's very surreal every day to think that we're making television in the middle of a global pandemic. I mean, like that's it's the very fortunate to be able to do that. And see that shows continue to be made. Like one of my episodes just got wrapped up like 2 weeks ago. So I'm looking at cuts right now for it. And the machine just continues to churn, right? And so I don't know. I think that what I do like, and as Kay was saying, is that there's different ways to tell, television stories, right? As far as like shows, because like from Flight Attendant to WandaVision. Like WandaVision, I think, is another good example of that first people were like, I want it now. I need every single episode. But now people are starting to realize like, oh, it gives me time to watch an episode, gives me a week to digest it, come up with 100 different conspiracy theories, talk with all my friends about it, and then tune in next week to do that, right? Whereas then you have other shows that are going to be coming out just going to drop it all at once. there's, you know, and there's other shows that were just such a breath of fresh air, like Ted Lasso. Ted Lasso was just such an amazing show that came out last year, and I think it came out at the perfect time, as I said, you know, because we all became professional television watchers thanks to this pandemic. Like watching everything. Like I don't know if I would have necessarily, you know, raced home to watch The Queen's Gambit right away. I don't know if that would have been like at the top of my list, but you know, it's like when you're like, oh, I'm going to try this, I'm going to sample this, and you're just like, oh my God, this is amazing. And it just sort of, you know, opens you up in that way. And I think that's where we're in a fun time where people are willing to try different things and watch different shows and get, you know, get different reactions and stuff like that. And I don't know what, like, what's going to happen is like, as far as where that pendulum is going to swing, because I don't even know if there is a pendulum right now. That's the crazy part. You guys, what is it? You just finished up The Boys, right? The next season, or are you right in the middle of that, Slim?
The room is done, but we just started production last week.
Right. So barring any sort of complications, i.e. shooting in the middle of a pandemic, I mean, it's like, you know, it's like we'll be, you know, be able to watch that and look forward to that. So I think that, and then, you know, as far as network television, they're already starting to ramp up the next pilot season. They're getting ready to start casting and shooting that, and that there's pilots that were shot last year that barely just got shot. So it's the schedule is so all over the place. I don't know what's going to happen, and where at the same time, I don't think I'm going to really see anybody in person in a writer's room until 2023. You know?
And when we see somebody in person, we're not getting lunch anymore, you guys. Lunches are gone.
Lunches are gone, and we might not even get
lunches
offices.
For closers.
We're not going to get offices either, yeah.
We're not getting offices. We'll get like there was a show that was for Netflix that they had a writer's room, and they had one office for like the EPs, but no one else got any rooms. So they just were there in the writer's room, and then they were gone for
We've worked on two shows like that before all of this started, and it sucks.
Yeah,
you come in. You put your stuff in the corner, you sit in the
or you just keep your backpack on.
You know, what scared me early on in the pandemic was when they were figuring out some of the mitigation was like showrunners were considered non-essential personnel on their own sets.
Yeah.
And that, which is outrageous and terrifying at the same time. And I think it's been addressed, but the fact that showrunners are not considered, because even a show where the writers aren't sent to set, I always feel suffers as a result if there's no one there from the creative side to supervise production.
I would be really, it was a big battle before COVID, a lot of shows to get the studio to let you send a writer up for their episode. I would venture to say it's probably not going to happen in the future. I think the showrunner will go up. They have this actually amazing software friends of mine are using where you can basically sit like you're sitting down in front of your computer, and it's like you're in Video Village. You're watching the A camera, you're watching the B camera, you're watching the C camera. Is it exactly the same? I don't know. Does it mean I don't have to sit in the woods at 3 o'clock in the morning in the pouring rain? It kind of does. So, but between the Zoom rooms and the software, we're using something called Miro, and I know there's another writer's room software. They have the boards up and everything. It's kind of amazing what Hollywood's been able to put together in less than 1 year to make what we do pretty similar to what we need to do, but just from our.
I want to talk about the virtual writers' room, but before we do that, I want to ask VJ. Kevin Riley famously said pilots are going to be a thing of the past, and the rumors of their demise were greatly exaggerated because it seems they keep rearing their ugly head no matter how much the networks want to save money, how much they say pilots are dead. But it does seem that the pandemic has accelerated sort of this 52-a-week year season and straight to series orders. What do you think the future holds for the pilots?
It's interesting that you're asking me that, because I was like, as soon as you brought up this, what does the future hold? I was like, I would like to know. I would very much like to know what the future holds. I hope someone here has an answer. Honestly, I'm kind of surprised that they're shooting a bunch of pilots. this year. Like, I really thought, I was talking with people in our virtual SWAT room end of last year. I was like, they're not going to shoot anything. They're just going to choose some things, go straight to series. They'll actually save money that way instead of spending 10 million a pilot for like things they're not even going to do anything with. I was like, that's what they're going to do. And they're not. They're making pilots. And so I'm not sure if that shows how entrenched certain engines are or certain ways of doing things or thinking are. I'm not sure. Or if that's actually a more valuable process than like I think it is. Because honestly, the truth is, and this is just my personal opinion, I think that the broadcast process of making like 20 pilots and picking up 7 shows is not the best process, because I think that in the end you end up making pilots that aren't even the best pilot because it's a sales document, you know. And so I wouldn't mind if they just picked based on the scripts and the team and a presentation of what the season is or something. So I was okay with that change, and that change apparently is not happening, at least right now.
Well, I think the one thing we can agree on is the French need to stop making such good shows, because we're all going to be in trouble if they keep making shows like Lupin and Call My Agent. We're all going to be out of a job. It's like, please stop. Go back to making crappy shows that don't go on the air in America so we can keep supplying the world with our product.
I'm more worried about GPT-3 than the French. the algorithm that basically was a deep think language learning program. That's scary.
That's the one that can write. You can write scripts or something, or
it's getting there.
But you know, everybody has their job and our
next
job.
year. So.
Okay. Well, I want to ask everybody, how has COVID changed your job? So I want to start with Teresa and work our way through the panel. Whether it's the virtual writers room, whether it's the lack of camaraderie, the lack of Trader Joe's chocolate covered pretzels in your life, whatever it is, tell us about COVID and you.
I haven't been to a Trader Joe's in a year. It's real sad. I miss Trader Joe's a lot. I think for me, working in a virtual writer's room, I took a lot more naps during lunch and after work, because, you know, when you're in a room, you feed off the energy of the other people, and you're getting up to go get coffee. You take a walk after lunch. You know, you feed off of the energy of the room. I love it so much. And when I'm just sitting at my kitchen table, you know, talking at my screen, when we all break for lunch, I just want to collapse. And, you know, managing my physical state in a virtual writer's room became a daily challenge of like making sure I'm, you know, alert and ready to engage. I invested in the blue blocker glasses, like tried to do the afternoon standing. It was all just techniques of keeping my energy up, because I'm just sitting in a comfy chair in my kitchen. So our showrunner adjusted our room hours, which became shorter than they were on a traditional rooms, because when you're on Zoom, you're just so totally engaged. You don't really have the spin-off conversations, the walk away, someone, brings cookies down the hall and everyone talks about that for 5 minutes. So with that total focus, I have total exhaustion afterwards. That was a big thing for me.
Yeah, I totally get that. What about you, VJ?
I was muted. Yes. No, I actually, a lot of the stuff that Teresa said would also apply. Like, I also feel like, because this last SWAT season, we did like 2 months in person, and then it was virtual, so I could compare it like real time. And it is more exhausting to be on the screen, because there aren't the distractions of being actually around other people. Like, yes, there will be a few asides, but it's not the same as people coming in and out, taking let's take a break, of like you're also looking at everyone all the time. It adds to the panopticon effect of anyone could be looking at me at any time. Whereas if I'm in the room, I know, everyone's looking at Sean, he's talking. I can kind of chill, but no, everyone, for all I know, is looking at me this whole time, and your mind kind of knows that. And I think that also is exhausting. And also a weird thing happened, and I've said this to a few other people who were like, this is just you, VJ, you're crazy. But I felt like after a couple of months, because we did a good like 6 months on looking at the screen, and after a couple of months of looking at it, it went from, at the very beginning, I was like, everyone's at their home and I'm talking to them. And it's like when you talk to someone on the phone, you're imagining where they are, and I'm imagining this person, to you guys only exist on my screen. It was an actual weird change of I started to feel like I was just talking to the screen instead of talking to people in their homes who are also looking at a screen, if that makes any sense. So that's my 2 cents on that.
And Gab, you are in the unenviable position of having started a show where you couldn't even meet your staff in person.
I was going to say off what VJ said, literally, I don't think any of my writers exist in real life because I met with them, interviewed them, hired them. They're in the room with me every day. No idea if they're real because I've never seen them in real life. And that includes my partner on the series. I mean, it's kind of crazy. It's a very different thing. I think VJ's totally right about just not only are you just constantly looking at people, but you're looking at yourself, which for me is the most horrifying part of it. The three careers that are going to make out like gangbusters when this is over is real estate agents, so you can get out of that house you never want to see again, divorce lawyers, so you can get rid of that spouse you never want to see again, and plastic surgeries, so you can figure out what the frick happened to my neck. Okay, because Zoom is just all about everyone staring at their own necks. But that has been really hard. And the weird thing I miss too is sidebars. We've tried to set it up so we can do that, where we can have two writers go off into like a different room. Because especially like we're on a very, very, very serialized show. It's hard, you need like those two writers to be kind of like talking, much more closely. And normally like they're kind of down at the end of the room, talking about it, or they meet up in the kitchen and they're like, oh, by the way, I'm going to have Bob like propose to Mary here. No, you can't do that. I'm doing that in my episode. It's all that stuff that kind of naturally happens that we don't really have a place for on Zoom.
Yeah.
So that's really kind of been the trickiest thing. I will say though that the writers board programs are pretty awesome. You create these cards and everything. You can move them around. No one needs good handwriting.
Speaking of good handwriting,
you still need to know how to do the Miro though. I can't stand Miro because I
know how to do it. I'm my assistant. I'm like, go, my love, go do it.
I want to ask Slim, because the second season you broke in a room, and third season you did virtually. How do you compare it?
I honestly, I feel like I'm probably the only one here. I really enjoy the virtual room. I enjoy it so much more than the actual room, and maybe that's just I don't know. I'm not quite sure, but all I can say is when it's everybody on there, everybody has to be on. You know what I mean? And there isn't that one person in the room is kind of like taking up all the space, and some people get insecure and they just get small in their seats. And I don't know. I think it's great because you don't have to drive. You're not in traffic for an hour. Yes, I'm not listening to as much audiobooks as I used to.
You would say that. I remember when you got in a car accident on the way to Fox.
I hate driving in LA. So you don't, so that hour, hour and a half, however far you are in the morning, then an hour and a half, you get into the office, you're grumpy because like driving sucks, and 405 and the 101, then you have to kind of like deal with that. And then finally you kind of get into the rhythm. Whereas you're home, I can read more. You know what I mean? I can catch up on what's going on with character, what's going on with whatever themes that we're doing. I can read an article in the Atlantic and be like, oh guys, I just checked this out. You know what I mean? There's just so much more time. And I'm a new dad. I get to spend time with my kid. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I get to hear him screaming, and as he's growing up or check in, and to me, that's the future. Yes, I know like a lot of people, it's like, oh, we need that thing in the room, but we were scared. We started the room, I think we had about 2 months in the actual physical writer's room. And then we transitioned, and we were very scared that we wouldn't have the sort of talking over each other and everything because of the technology. And then then slowly but surely, you just develop that habit, and you kind of fall into that rhythm of, if you speak over someone, it's not like the audio is going to cut out unless everybody's talking at once, like one of those family Zooms, which is always a nightmare.
Or WonderCon panels.
Exactly. Well, everybody's behaving pretty well, but I think it's awesome. I think it's the way of the future. I think in terms of a career, the amount of meetings that you can have are so much more, and people are just everywhere. You know what I mean? Even the project that I'm working on, the animators are like in the countryside of like outside of London. You know what I mean? And it can happen. Whereas before, you know, setting up an in-person meeting or whatever was just a big pain.
Yeah. And okay, what do you think, Kay? I don't know.
Well, like a couple people, we started when I was on Motherland, we started in person. And then we went to the Zoom room. And the very first thing we did on day one is we shut our video off. Because we all were like, no, we do not want to see each other. This is a nightmare. We felt like it was a little bit easier because we had known each other. I don't know what it would be like if you're getting started with people you hadn't been in a room with. But we also, our show was very, there's a ton of world building to it. And it's also a soap at the same time. And we didn't use a program. We just used Google Docs, which was impossible. I mean, our assistants just went above and beyond to make it work and to keep everything updated. But you can't, it's so hard to look at the screen and see the board, see the episode board, see the season board, see the mythology, to see all of that stuff. It was really, really hard. And we also were completely exhausted. So we would work, 10 to 4 and feel like, oh God, we're not getting anything done. We got so much more done, but we were so much more exhausted. I think the one thing that's going to come out of this is nobody is going to want to wear hard pants ever again.
No, I was going to say the number one advantage was you could wear sweatpants every day. That's great.
Nobody's wearing hard pants ever again.
Done.
Done.
Pants. But yeah,
or pants.
Just to follow on that, I would basically started my new show the week after we locked down here in LA last March, and it was my first time really running a room for my EP, and it was a small room. We only had 4 writers, an EP, and a writer's assistant, and then we added another writer later. It was. I don't miss the commute at all. I don't miss commuting to a writer's room. I do miss goofing around in the room and putting on a YouTube video and, going out to lunch and all that fun stuff. I miss the social stuff. But like Kay was saying, I feel like we got so much more work done because there are no distractions. And we wanted to spend as little time as possible. After a while, it just got so exhausting looking at the windows all day long that I kind of changed our schedule. So we would be on for 2 or 3 hours in the morning, starting 9:30 or 10. Then we'd break for lunch for like an hour and a half. I'd go for a walk and, whatever. And then we'd reconvene for another couple hours in the afternoon. And then I basically did it every other day. We'd only meet like Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And I would say Tuesday, Thursday is independent study where everyone works on your own. So you can have that alone time as a writer to focus and pitch, generate ideas to come to the room with the next day or problem solve. And I felt that really helped energize people in our room that kept us going. It really helped ameliorate the exhaustion factor.
The exhaustion factor is real. I mean, it's like medical science. They say it is. The only good thing that could really come out of this is, I know some of you and maybe all of you have been in those like 20-hour-a-day rooms, because your boss is in the middle of a divorce or whatever, and he just wants everyone to sit there all day. Those just can't happen on Zoom anymore. I mean, it just can't happen. So I think our days may become a little more civilized in the future.
And I'll address a question I've gotten a lot from people on Twitter, from pre-WJ writers, like this question of, now that a lot of writers' rooms are virtual, does that mean I can break in without having to move to LA? Can I stay in Cincinnati or in Florida and still break in? And
no,
everyone wants to know, but I feel like that the answer to that goes back to, it's just really hard to break in. It's hard to break in, and the virtual rooms it might take away one factor of access, but breaking into TV, it's still a combination of who relationships you build, connections that you make at networking events or through meetings, and all of those things still have to, come together for you to be able to have the training and the connections for when that opportunity comes through. I know that all the writing fellowships are now virtual. I feel like in that's an advantage. So you don't have to be in LA to apply and do the CBS Writers Program. But for the question of, whether all rooms would be virtual going forward, I don't know the answer. Like VJ said, we don't know the answer, but it'll be probably on a show by show basis. But LA, I feel like, is still going to be the place you need to be to break in.
Just to break the EP on my show. He's had a 30+ year career in this business and has won many Emmys and all that. He lives in Maine. He lives out in the sticks in Maine, and he did the entire show. He hasn't been to LA in over a year. He just comes on the screen from his house in Maine, and
he has been in the business for 30 years. He's not the pre-EP. He's not the pre-P. I really have my life changed almost not at all because of COVID, except for some production issues with doing records with actors, which suddenly took 4 times as much time. But that's a completely different side niche issue of animation. The weird thing that I experienced was doing development. I've been doing development on a television adaptation of Myst. Right. And I ended up having a lot more face time with the game developers, with the Miller brothers, weirdly enough. And we would have meetings twice a week that otherwise we could not have had because they were in Spokane, Washington. And it turned out to be really good, but also very weird. Okay, so I know you guys think man, I had this really, it's just weird, being on Zoom and looking at people's faces and they're looking back at me, and what's happening. Let me tell you something. When the man you're having a meeting with on Zoom, that face on the screen is the guy who plays Atris in Myst, who just looked at you like his face on a screen on a book page. You have just real serious cognitive dissonance issues. You wake up every morning wondering what the is real and if it's actually happening. So Zoom has really messed with my head a little bit. Just a little bit.
Yeah, for me, it was the production side that was so awful because every day we tested the cast and crew for COVID, it was like a sort of Damocles hanging over. You didn't know when the test came back, who was going to have it? Was anyone going to have it? We're going to have to shut down. It was so stressful. And by conversely, when you get the test back and everyone was fine, everybody was negative. It was wonderful. It was wonderfully liberating, and you'd have a great day until you did it all over again. But it also made, production less fun, because everyone's sitting around in mass and we had less location days. And, it really screwed around with the extras because we had all these different groups of extras that had to be tested. And if somebody was found, in that, you'd have to let them go. And it was just, it took a lot of the joy out of producing because it's just look, and I'm not comparing, I'm not saying look, people are dying, this is a horrible thing, so I'm not saying we got it bad, but I'm just saying in the context of what we're talking about, producing film. And look, I went to prep our second season last March, and everything shut down, and I came back and got coronavirus on the way back from Europe. So that was not particularly great. But it's really challenging producing in this environment. We had a lot of cast that didn't want to travel, guest stars that didn't want to travel. And to their credit, I mean, nobody's begrudging them that. But it does make the actual physical act of producing television that much more complicated. Not to mention, it adds about 10% to the budget of every episode, which is fine if you're, a $15 million show for Netflix or for, CBS or what it is really, The Mandalorian. It's okay. But if you're a smaller show with a smaller budget, it can be very, very challenging to find that money for testing and mitigation and cleaning. And, quite honestly, it clearly didn't go into the food because the food has gotten a lot worse because we don't do buffet eating anymore. It's all in these little pre-packs, and it's the worst. It's like K rations in the military, I would guess.
So there's no craft at all now. There's no craft service. There's no table where I can go and eat a donut and justify it.
It's all prepackaged food.
Oh,
I think you get a donut in an individual wrapper.
Yeah. Hey, Mark, just curious, was that regular coronavirus or was that Dragon's coronavirus that you got?
Oh my God. Too soon. Stop. More dragons stuff. Just because Ashley and Steve have a hit show on Netflix right now, DOTA Dragon's Fire, they can be very proud of it.
He did it again. I love it.
Dragon's Domain. Just check it out.
Dragons don't leave.
I Pete's Dragon.
How the dragon got his groove back.
So I before we wrap up, and we could go on for so long, and I'm really disappointed that we can't. But even like the real WonderCon, there are limits on how long we can go. And I see like the guy with the sign. I'm having flashbacks, like PTSD. It's been 5 minutes, 5 minutes. You're over. So I want to ask you as we wrap up, if you could tell me one. So your social media handle, if people want to follow you, also maybe what you're watching, and just leave us with a final thought. And then I also want to tell the audience that this is, when this drops on at the end of March, we're going to do, and we'll see how this works for whoever wants to participate. We're going to do it inside the Writers Room Clubhouse on Sunday, March 27th. At 7 Eastern, 10 Eastern, 7 Pacific Standard Time, 10 Eastern Time on Sunday, March 27th. We're going to do it inside the Writers Room Clubhouse, which is great. If you want to join, some of the panelists will be there. And if you have questions about what we're writing and stuff we didn't answer, and we can have that would be great. Also, I want to remind you that Ashley and Steve's new podcast, Cartoon Fire, Cartoon Barroom, is now available for download, or you can watch it on the Electric Now channel. And we're absolutely thrilled about hopefully seeing you all in person at San Diego. If not this year, certainly next year. Maybe we'll just do a very big Zoom with all 100,000 people. And it'll be, like a writer's room. We'll show you what it's like. So, and then if you have a question for another writer on this panel, so I want to know your social media, what you're watching, and if you have a question for somebody else, we'll start with Teresa.
Oh, my social is at Teresa Palooza on Twitter and Instagram. What am I watching? I just finished Ted Lasso in a 24-hour period. And just started I May Destroy You, which I'm excited and terrified about because it's triggering for women. And what's the third question? Do I have a question for?
So is Ted Lasso for men. Those guys are really good athletes. And for some of us who are not so great at soccer or football, it's very difficult to watch. No, Ted Lasso is fantastic. I'm not saying that because we all love Chris Parnell at Apple. I'm saying it because it's fantastic.
It's fantastic.
I couldn't believe how good it was.
Yeah.
I was resisting watching Apple for a while because I'm like, oh, am I really going to pay for another streaming service? But I will pay for that forever just to watch Ted Lasso.
Yeah.
So, Teresa, any questions for one of our esteemed panelists?
That they're going to answer right now?
I think I answer right now because we don't get to do Q&A because there's no audience out there except in the ether. So I'm going to let you ask a question.
It's a lightning round.
Okay.
It's a lightning round.
Well, since we have a wonderful diverse panel of writers here, I'm going to ask a question about diversity and inclusion, which is, what are some of the wins and things that you're excited about? I'm going to keep it positive. The wins that you've seen during this time and the things that you're feel positive about going forward in terms of diversity, inclusion, and equity in the TV writers' room.
I'm excited because I know it's not a genre show, but our writers' room is like almost all women, which is super exciting. And I have not been on that probably since like Grey's Anatomy. I mean, just for no reason. And by the way, I also think for genre, some of it is, self-selecting. I think it's obviously stereotypical, but I think a lot of them don't want to work much, in genre shows. But when I started out, like I was just like the lone girl in every room, when we were talking about spaceships and alien abduction. So I'm excited that is, I think it's changing more. It's been slowly changing over the years, but I feel like it's kind of gunning towards the future a little faster
now. Okay. Anyone else want to answer Teresa's question before we move on to? Yeah, tell us all about diversity.
Yeah, no. personally, like, I'm pretty happy about the fact that I can build a show that, like, and I think by the time now that everybody has seen it, they realize it is actually, rather than kind of built around a male action hero, is actually built around several female action heroes, and it can be embraced in the way that it is, and that I can build on that and have the opportunity to build on that. There's a time when it's like you're making animation, and I'm, Steve could probably answer that one, where it's like, well, you've got to remember, like, the boys in the audience are the ones who buy the toys, and yeah, I never got to, well, think about the demos.
And I'll just add to that, the show that I'm working on now that hasn't been announced yet and won't be coming until 2022. It's been really fun because this particular show has a great variety of representation in it. We have gender non-conforming characters and other sexualities and all different sort of racial representations. It's really exciting, and it makes it, I don't know, it's very different and inclusive, and I'm really excited about it.
I got to say that for me, it is cool, but it's just like, well, wouldn't you want your writer's room to look like America and the rest of the world? You know what I mean? It's much richer storytelling. There are things that I learn about from the, like, LGBTQ community that I'm like, oh, I never considered that. You know what I mean? And or this community or this side, or even from white guys. Like, oh wow, that's pretty cool in Idaho. You know what I'm saying? So it's like I think it's great, and to me, I feel like I don't understand why it's taken this long. I was watching on HBO Max the Fresh Prince reunion, and they were like, the writer's room was all white, and I was like, what? You know what I mean? So I think we're moving into really great spaces, and even like with I May Destroy You, to see that voice, that unique voice and perspective come out and make such an incredible show. I think that's the great thing about there being so many avenues for content.
Great. VJ, so the question is social media and to what you're watching, and if you have a question for someone else on the panel.
Social media is just my name, VJ Boyd, on Twitter. Is really the only one that I have public. And then I've been catching up on Search Party because I didn't even know there was a third and fourth season or that they were on HBO Max. I really have been out of it as far as knowing what TV shows are around. I love Search Party. I love the first two seasons. Just about to finish season 3, and then I'll just binge season 4. Although binging for me is like over the course of like 3 weeks. I can't do it in a day. And my question is actually for Teresa, because it goes to the very first question you asked, Mark, about how to get that next job. And am I correct, Teresa, that you were actually a staff writer and night writer in like 2008? So there was a big gap between that and SEAL Team. And I was curious if that was a choice or like just to hear about your perseverance in keeping at it, the writing part. I know you're acting. Then, so I just want to hear about what that was and what that was like.
Oh, sure. That's like the dirty secret I try not to to bring up. But I used to write with a writing partner. So she and I staffed on Knight Rider together a million years ago. And right after the show was canceled, we split. And, for those in the audience who don't know, when you're in a writing partnership, you are one entity to the studios and networks. You get paid, you share one salary, you are hired and fired together. And all of our writing samples that we had spent years working on, when we split, they all became, dust, and I had to start over. And I think I had a lot of, she and I were very symbiotic. She was very good at character and dialogue. I was very good at plot and structure. But I had to learn to strengthen all those muscles on my own after that. So it took me many years to do that, continue writing pilots and specs, applying to the programs. And then just, decided to give my acting career one last push. And I concentrated on that with my writing. But then once I started working as a writer's assistant, again, to try to break into TV as a solo writer, I put my acting career on hold. Not everyone has to do that. I do know a lot of TV writers who are still pursuing their acting, but I just put that on hold because I'm like, I want back in, having tasted it, having been on set and watched people say words that I wrote. I wanted to get back in there. So I just kept going, and I wouldn't take no for an answer. Every year I would apply to the programs and get rejected from all of them. And I just kept going because I wanted to get back in. So whether it was perseverance or just stubbornness, because I'm a Taurus, who knows? But that's what I did.
And I want to say on behalf of Deric and Kay and myself, we all have writing partners, and it's a very different way of approaching. And we're all very lucky. I think we all have great writing partners that we love working with, and that can be very liberating. And I think we all have people who are very different than us, but that makes it fun. And but they're not on the panel, because then this would be a 5-hour panel instead of a 3-hour panel. So we have to limit it. So I knew Kay before I knew Aaron. I knew Deric before I knew Ben, and I knew myself before I knew Steve Grazier. But I want to give them all a shout out, even though they're not on this panel. Okay, Gab, tell us social media, where people can follow you, what you're watching, not what you're wearing, and where. And a question for someone else on the.
I am at TV Gab, TV and then Gab. It's funny, I was trying to think, obviously I'm trying to get through all the fabulous things we need to be watching, but I'll tell you what my little guilty pleasure is recently, because I'm surprised that I like it so much, because it apparently was very difficult creatively, but Snowpiercer, I'm enjoying it. It's a cool world. I'm kind of obsessed with just the train part of it. And it's one of those things that does drop every week. And I kind of like, I wonder if Snowpiercer dropped yet, So I'm kind of liking it. So I'm enjoying that. And actually, Mark, my question is to you, just out of curiosity.
You want to know about my new book? Nobody does it better. About the history of the James Bond movies, now in paperback, but also still available in hardcover, audio, and digital. Sorry, go ahead.
Did you, because you had mentioned it earlier, when you were doing, when you were producing, with the COVID, the testing and everything, did you have pods on set? And if so, what pod did they put you and Steve in as the writers?
Well, we had our show was a fairly, low budget show. We did have pods, but since, we were sort of removed from that. We were footloose and fancy free. We could go wherever we wanted.
Go wherever you wanted.
Yeah, but we, because that's the only way I would allow it to happen.
Well, coming up, we're going to be shooting in June. I'm hoping things are going to be a little bit different, but the whole, what is it, not right to work, but whatever that giant document that all the unions put together, for the testing and everything, there are no writers in it. And we appear to not exist in terms of the DGA, SAG, the Editors Guild, or anyone, Teamsters.
I will say the thing that they used to clean COVID on the hour, it was this really futuristic looking weird device. So at one point, I thought the set deck was not good. So I said, go get that COVID thing and bring it in here. And they said, what are you talking about? Is there a problem? And we cleaned it like a half hour ago. Are you worried about corona? No, I want it to be set deck in here because it looks futuristic and it will help make this office look more futuristic if we just put the COVID thing in here. And so it ended up going into the...
that would be the big trivia question for next season. Who noticed it back there?
That's why you need showrunners on set.
The Starbucks cup in Game of Thrones, someone will be like, wait a minute, did they forget to take that out?
I've told the story before, but it's we filmed somewhere where English is a second language for a lot of the crew. So at one point, the prop master comes to me with this really scary looking device. And he goes, is this the avuncular disposition? And I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, the avuncular disposition for the scene where he loses his avuncular disposition. I said, no, avuncular disposition is just an expression in English. It has nothing to do with it. It's not a prop, but it was very funny. So those are
Did
some
he
of the
charge you $50,000 to build that prop?
No, thankfully not. Thankfully not. Okay, so what are you watching, Gab?
Snowpiercer.
That's right. But on HBO Max, not on TNT.
And other things. Actually, I'll say just before we go to sleep at night, my husband and I, because COVID has been so hard, we've really taken solace in old sitcoms, and we're now up to the 3rd season of Cheers, and it is still so good. It's just so funny and just so sharply written. So I would recommend that. And it doesn't.
I agree. But I can't watch Kirstie Alley anymore after the ridiculous.
I haven't even gotten to Kirstie Alley yet.
So, okay. So
that's great. You can roll right into Frasier after that.
Yeah. Reading my mind here. That's exactly
if there's another season of WandaVision, maybe you'll see it on that. Okay, so Slim, what about you? Tell us where people can follow you, what you're watching, and a question for someone else on the panel.
They could follow me IG and Twitter, Anslem Asylum, and on Clubhouse. Just find me either Slim or Anslem Richardson. Not that I'm watching currently, but I really loved Primal on HBO Max. That used to be on Cartoon Network. I just thought it was just brilliant. Fargo season 4, The Crown, and I May Destroy You were probably like the ones that I really enjoyed in the last few months. The question I have actually is for Ashley and Steven. You guys have talked about like with animation, you do like a partial scripts and handoff. And then you had also said something about, you don't have to do C&D stories. And is that a normal thing with animation, or can you do C&D, or have there been any animation series or whatever that's done?
It's funny, because I said that I don't do that, but the truth of the matter is that occasionally I do, but it's a scene, right? Look, the reality, and everybody who works in 1 hour live action, like if you were being 100% honest, knows that in nearly every episode, there are a couple of scenes that you write that are total effing bullshit. And if you had the power to just cut them to make your episode better, you fucking would. And if you sat down in every show that you love that's an hour long and you watch it, you probably go, don't really need that. Don't really need that. Don't really need that. That's all the crap that I cut out, right? And it's just about, because I only have so much real estate, it was really about just focusing on the characters who matter the most. And if I needed, a C story, it was really about a scene that kind of jumped into a POV that kind of helped me tell some part of the A story. There isn't room to do it. You can try it. It's just that it ends up feeling like really like the pace just ends up feeling super wrong.
Every once in a while, Archer episodes will have a B story. They'll cut away exactly what Ashley's saying to like a different POV, but it's not every episode. It's usually 1 or 2 scenes, which makes me think they were running short.
Ian, social media. What are you watching, and what are you asking a panelist on this panel?
My IG is just my name, Ian Weinreich, and right now I'm about to start season 2 of Servant. I just binged season 1 and liked it more than I thought I would.
Is that the M. Night Shyamalan?
Yeah.
Thingy? Wow.
Very creepy.
Chris Parnell will be very happy to hear
that. And I guess my question would be for anyone. So timing-wise with us, which was really weird, was that our room ended before the pandemic. We were filming when we got shut down, and our season 2 room is starting next week. So I have not done the Zoom room at all yet. So this will be me going in for the first time. So, and I guess I'm just curious if anyone has had like something embarrassing pop up behind them or behind one of their other writers that really made you kind of cringe that I should be on the lookout for.
Just be careful about wearing your glasses, because I can see what you're looking at. so sometimes you can tell somebody's playing a game on their computer. People know better now, but that would be the one thing to look at. For me anyway.
Ian, I can almost guarantee that if any of the writers have either a pet or a child, they will make it into the Zoom room at some point.
Yes, and don't put on a filter of yourself as a bunny? What was that?
The cat.
A cat.
I'm not a cat.
Okay.
Also,
well, good luck with that, and get it going soon.
Yeah, the other thing is make sure that you're mute when you're mute, because that could be embarrassing, especially if you get like another phone call or you
gotta pee.
Yeah, yep.
You let one rip.
I was on the other screen with Jeffrey Toobin that day.
Never gets old, Slim.
No.
Okay, well, we're very excited about Flight Attendant season 2. At least speaking for myself, I can't wait. Okay, so that brings us to Kay. Kay, tell us where people can follow you, what you're watching, and what question would you like to ask a member of this esteemed panel?
Topic3 on Twitter. I don't do any of the other ones that all the kids do. I am watching Money Heist, which is so much fun. And also, if you're going to rob a bank in Spain. But it's very fun. And I don't actually have a question for these fine panelists, which is my gift to all of you.
Okay, Ashley, we go to you.
Okay.
What are you watching? We know what you're making a show about dragons for Netflix. And what do you want to ask?
You can first you can follow me at Ashmaster0, spelled as 0. Because I've got an 11-year-old, and actually half of these shows are not appropriate for an 11-year-old, but I've been watching a lot of things that I realize have a theme. Like some of my favorite things that I've really enjoyed either recently or in the last year. Wayne on Amazon Prime, which is amazing. Cobra Kai on Netflix, which is amazing. Alex Rider, which was really good and surprised me. I watched that with my kid. It was like on IMDb TV. Like, who the F knew? And this is going to bring me to my question. And I just finished binge watching both seasons of The Boys. My question is to Slim. Slim, can Homelander really do whatever he wants to do? Can he do whatever he wants to do, Slim?
And on a skyscraper.
On a skyscraper.
I'll leave it at that.
As well you should.
Ashley, you're not watching Cartoon Barroom on the Electric Now app?
In fact, I am. I'm watching all the offerings on the Electric Now app. I'm watching Inglourious Trexperts and 430 Movie and a podcast that does not star any of us, The Best Movies Never Made, with screenwriter Josh Miller and Steven Scarlatta.
Fantastic. Gold star for you. Okay, Deric Hughes, tell us what you're watching, where to find you on social media, and a question for one of your peers here on the panel.
You can find me on DBlackanese, Twitter, IG, and Clubhouse. Watching, like I said, Ted Lasso, huge Ted Lasso stan. All my fellow blurs, shout out to them. They all know who they are. We're all big Ted Lasso stans. Cobra Kai, seasons 1 and 2, amazing. Season 3, I'm trying. It's like I don't know if I'm being distracted or what, but I'm getting back into that. And then WandaVision, been so much fun to watch that, and I think it's just going to be the year of Marvel. I'm a Marvel kid through and through. So you got WandaVision, Falcon, Winter Soldier is coming up, and then Loki. I mean, that's just all before the summer. So right there, who needs a movie theater, right?
You keep calling it Falcon and the Winter Snowman, and I keep catching. I'm like, it's
Winter
so
Fireman.
annoying. Because of that Timothy Dalton, Timothy Dalton.
Question is for everyone here. If you had a choice, would you rather work with Ashley on DOTA, Dragon's Blood, or with Mark Altman on DOTA's Dragon's Bad Breath?
I think we all know the answer to that question.
My real question for everybody is because, I think someone else brought it, people who are wanting to break into this business, and because we're in such a strange time to break in this business, if you started out today, do you think that you would be able to break into the business the way that you did when you first started out a long time ago?
No.
Or, right? It's terrifying.
Dude, I insulted somebody on AOL, so no, absolutely would not be able to pull that off again.
No, because I think it was, it's meeting people, it's networking, and you can run into someone, a friend of yours in a restaurant, and they're having dinner with someone else, and then all of a sudden, you can have a conversation. They should have some kind of Zoom thing we could just randomly go on and just see who's there or something. I don't know how you recreate that.
Oh, what's it like the Omegle? You ever seen that where people basically, it's almost like it's like a newer version of chat roulette, but if they did that for writers, where you just get on there and then people just pop up like, hey, how's it going?
Yeah. That's a great idea.
I think in a universe where you can't schmooze, because we're in it'd be almost impossible for the what do they call us, the the golden age writers here. Without schmoozing and meeting with
introverts,
and just running into people and going to Lola's and dealing with investors. I mean, I can't see it. I think
I would say, because I think one thing that's happened is that breaking in has gotten kind of backwards for people. So they're focusing so much on, contacts and contests and all this stuff, that the most important thing people can focus on to break in is their writing. They have to, because if you meet somebody, if you're on Writer Roulette and Carlton Hughes is on there and he says to you, great, I'd love to read something, and you don't have your best script that you can give him, that's it. Yeah. That's your shot.
Yeah.
So I think it really is like, you sit down and write stuff and don't worry about all of the other crap that's surrounding this business.
But I think part also of being a great writer is having life experience and being able to incorporate that experience into your writing. And I think one of the biggest challenges with the pandemic is we're not evolving. We're not having many. I mean, maybe I'm speaking for myself, but you're not. I'm certainly not like traveling and having new experiences and meeting new people and going new places.
What are you talking about? I travel every day from my kitchen to the living room. I mean, I'm getting lots of experience off of that.
Does this mean that you are not going to watch my short film of me going to Ralph's every Thursday?
What, you don't use Instacart? Are you crazy? I haven't been in a supermarket in a year.
Well, I'll offer some optimism for the writers out there breaking in. The one thing I will say about this time, there's two things I will say about this time. One is that for all of the horror that Twitter has been for the last 4 years, I feel like writer Twitter has been wonderful, and it's just getting better. Like, you have access to showrunners. You have access to everyone on this panel who's on Twitter, and I've had wonderful interactions with emerging writers who have questions, or they respond really thoughtfully to something I posted. And it's like, you can create connections just on Twitter by being, kind and normal, please. But the other thing, but the other wonderful thing, and also with Twitter, there's a lot, you can learn a lot. It's like having access means if you ask the right questions, if you really are not sure what to do with this aspect of your script, or you're not sure how to handle this challenge in the industry, you can get an answer from people who are actually in the industry. It's been wonderful watching, how much support there is for emerging writers on Twitter.
Clubhouse,
and the other thing that, go ahead.
Slim.
I was just saying, Clubhouse is the same. It's the same thing,
and it's only going to grow as they start to let more people in. I think Clubhouse is great. That's why we're going to try and do this on Clubhouse this weekend, to sort of see if we can do, and this was actually Chris Parnell's idea, to try and do like a writer's clubhouse, maybe, once a month, and starting with, a sort of live post show to this never ending panel. Speaking of which brings me to Steve Melching. And this may be the first panel we've ever done where everyone isn't hungover. So virtual comic WonderCon is actually a pretty good thing. So Steve Melching, what are you watching? What's your social media handle, and what do you want to ask someone on this panel?
Well, social media is just at Stephen Melching on Twitter. I'm also on Instagram, but I've never really posted there. Maybe I'll change that. And I am on Clubhouse, but I haven't used it yet. But maybe this will be the weekend to try it out. I've been using the pandemic time to catch up on things that I've never seen before, like filling in gaps. Watched a lot of movies that I've never seen. I've revisited a lot of movies that I haven't seen in 20, 30 years. And a show I'm watching right now that I missed was The Expanse. I've missed that show. I'm in season 2 now, so I know I've got a few more seasons to get through, but I'm enjoying it.
So good.
I'm also watching another show that I missed, a comedy called Party Down, which is a silly comedy
Party
show
Down's
on
great.
Starz. Oh, it's so funny. And I'm just going to put in a quick plug for a Comedy Central show called Review. That's a really funny show about this guy that reviews life experiences. It's a hidden gem. As far as a question goes, Deric kind of asked my question, but I guess mine is kind of an adjunct to that, which is, we talked about how this really is a business of relationships. And in this era of COVID, we're not randomly running into people at parties or premieres or lobbies of Netflix or restaurants and whatnot. How do you maintain the relationships that you have with people that are maybe more sort of casual professional acquaintances that you would run into things like this that might lead to a job? Like Ashley has become a great collaborator on DOTA, Dragon's Blood, now on Netflix. But before that, we would just see each other at Comic-Con and WonderCon or Lola's or something, or not Lola, or out for drinks or something like that. But without that, I wouldn't have been in a situation for Ashley to say, "Hey, Steve, maybe you should come work on DOTA, Dragon's Blood."
That's not true. You were co-hosting a podcast together, the 430 movie,
okay.
And that's when this all happened.
But anyone, are you able to maintain relationships or check in with someone?
You have to co-host a podcast with every person that you know.
Yes, actually.
I mean, I would say that I've had more generals in the last 4 or 5 months than I've probably had in the last 3 years. Yeah. And that also includes just execs who wanted to like follow up. And so sort of doing these catch-ups, like you're saying, where whether they were contacting my reps or vice versa. And I just feel like there is this weird thing where people are much more ready to hop on Zoom for half an hour than go to the office or have you go to their office or meet for drinks. So I've strangely probably had more of that now than I've had in a long time.
They don't have to serve you water, and it's easier to kick you out.
Yeah. It's the nice thing, because we've had a lot of meetings too, and it is great because you don't have to go, well, where are they? What after Santa Monica,
like Santa Monica? Oh, no.
The Valley, yuck.
But yeah, we've had more meetings too, and we're working on a couple of pitches with people because of that. And it does seem to have erased a barrier in a way where you just have to go, okay, everybody has to be available at 4 to be on Zoom, and you don't have to wear pants. So.
Hey, is everybody caught up with the latest episode of WandaVision before?
No. Don't.
I haven't seen any of it, so I won't remember.
No spoilers on this podcast, on this WonderCon at all.
Weeks ago, Deric.
That's right. If the show's over, it's already the winter in the Falcon.
I mean, I'm just kind of worried, like which Infinity Stone Kay has, because her eyes are glowing right now. So I'm just.
Those are my blue blocker.
Hopefully, she won't snap.
I will say, one last thing to add with that is like, I do like a bunch of different Zoom rooms with friends. Like I have like I said, my fellow blurs, we do like a brunch that we do like every Sunday. So we get together for a couple hours there. And then I have other friends that do like trivia nights, so you have your friends and colleagues and you just try to be a little bit more active, or try to be active and, suggest like doing game nights and stuff like that. So you still maintain sort of relationships with people, because people kind of do want to get together, even if it is on a virtual, setting. They still want that sort of connection, and you be able to, catch up with people. And then afterwards, like, hey, we should, let's get on the phone, let's talk. I do one-on-ones with some of my friends, catch up like once a weekend. I know Ash and I, we've been talking about trying to do a Zoom, catching up. I mean, so it's like you have to make more of the concerted effort to try to do that. But then again, joining groups on Facebook, and it sort of happens organically with other people that you start to build relationships with. It's still relationship building even in a virtual setting. And you just have to be a much more savvy at it, much more aggressive than you normally would, expecting birthday parties. Right.
And I will say too, like Teresa and I have been doing since the pandemic started, every week, every Saturday night with a bunch of friends, we watch 2 episodes of Star Trek.
Which one?
All of them.
All of them. We're pan.
How do you define all of them?
What are you up to?
How do you decide what episodes?
They're on everybody. It rotates, so somebody picks every Saturday night, and we watch on Netflix, and then we get together on Zoom after, and we've been doing it every Saturday.
And
so you're watching them with the new effects. It's by theme. Very virus episodes.
Upcoming, I already know my next night I'm going to do 2 Barkley episodes from Next Gen. I love Barkley, so I just want to do a Barkley night.
And
then you can watch the A-Team.
Nobody can complain. You have to just accept, whoever's choice it is, it's their choice, even if they pick Voyager episodes.
And if you're a Star Trek fan, you can listen to Inglorious Treksperts wherever you get your podcast.
Or the new Inglorious Treksperts briefing room.
With audio commentaries of curated Star Trek episodes from writers, producers, and stars of all the Star Trek series. Okay, so last but not least, you can reach me, Mark Altman, on Instagram, Twitter, and now on Clubhouse, Mark A. Altman. And of course, what am I watching? Well, I think I said I just finished The Flight Attendant, which I loved. Lupin was fantastic, and I'm in the middle of Call My Agent now. So a plethora of great shows right now. It really is truly a golden age, and can't say enough good things about Ted Lasso. And I'm not even in your little group, but I love Ted Lasso. Let me tell you. So, and then by the way, I would be remiss if I didn't remind you the 50-year mission. Great oral history for you aspiring writers who want to know how the sausage is made. These are some great books. There's William Goldman. There's there's that wonderful book about the making of Chinatown that came out this year. And then there's always the perennial, the 50-year mission by Mark Altman and Edward Gross. And so I think I asked plenty of questions for all of you. So I'm going to spare you any more questions. But I want to thank everyone for being part of this WonderCon at home. You can follow everybody on social media. You can join us on Clubhouse. And hopefully we'll see all of you at San Diego Comic-Con this July. And if not, we shall return to this place again someday soon. Stay safe, stay healthy. And thanks for all the great television, gang.
Hey, this is Mark A. Altman.
This is Darren Doctorman, and we are the Inglorious Treksperts.
I thought it was a classic femme fatale. Just so much fun.
Like that Shakespearean lace in your acting.
I said, Gene, what do you want from this character?
I want you to just take the character and make it your own.
I had a good time on the film.
On day one, the movie was already $15 million over budget.
We started this movie without an ending. That's like painting yourself into a corner.
I don't think we've ever had a Star Trek captain on our show.
Being, as you said, number one on the call sheet, it is a producer's position if you're going to take it seriously. I was so glad they didn't cast me as Lorca.
You famously wrote that script in 12 days.
On one level, I wrote the script, and on another level, the story was written by everybody and his brother.
New episodes every Saturday, wherever you listen to podcasts, or download the Electric Now app. Keep on trekking. Ingloriously, of course.